I never thought a child's careless words would save my life. But one sentence, whispered in a hallway, changed everything. If you have ever wondered what quiet revenge looks like, if you believe truth does not need shouting to be powerful, then stay with me. And if stories like this speak to your heart, please like this video, subscribe, and listen closely, because this is not a story about anger. This is a story about listening. My name is Marilyn. I am not dramatic. I have never raised my voice in a fight. I am the kind of woman who believes silence can be stronger than words. I married my husband Richard later in life. We were both carrying pasts. He had a son from his first marriage, and I had learned how to live carefully, gently, without asking for much. When I married into this family, I promised myself one thing. I would never try to replace anyone. I would simply be kind. My stepson, Evan, was already grown. He was married. He had his own life. At least, that is what I believed. We lived in a quiet neighborhood, the kind where mornings smell like coffee and cut grass, where people wave but never ask questions. My days were simple. I cooked, I cleaned, I gardened, I drove the same silver car every day, to the store, to the library, to nowhere important. That car felt like freedom to me. I never imagined it could become a weapon. Evan visited more often than I expected. He never looked at me directly. His smiles were thin, polite, but tight. Sometimes I would catch him watching me, not with anger, not with love, with calculation. I told myself I was imagining it. I always did that. I didn't want trouble. I believed families were fragile things, and I did not want to be the reason anything cracked. Our house was quiet after sunset. Richard would fall asleep early. The television murmured softly. The walls held old echoes. That night, rain tapped against the windows, soft, steady. I was walking down the hallway when I heard Evan's voice, low, careless. He thought no one was listening. I cut her brakes. That was all he said. No emotion, no pause. Just a sentence floating in the dark. I stopped breathing. My hand touched the wall to steady myself. My heart did not race. It sank. I didn't scream. I didn't step forward. I listened. But Evan said nothing more. Footsteps moved away. A door closed, and I stood there, alone with a sentence that did not belong in my life. He must be joking. That was my first thought, because the truth felt too heavy to carry. I told myself people say terrible things without meaning them. I told myself I was safe, but my body did not believe me. Morning came softly. The rain had washed the streets clean. Birds sang like nothing had happened. Richard drank his coffee. He smiled at me. "Did you sleep well?" he asked. I nodded, I lied, I stood in the driveway, staring at my car. It looked the same, nothing broken, nothing wrong. But now it felt different, like a stranger. I opened the door slowly, sat down, held the steering wheel, my hands were shaking, I turned the key. Then stopped, something inside me whispered, "Don't." I did not tell my husband. Not yet. I needed certainty. I needed truth. I had lived long enough to know one thing. Accusations without proof destroy families, and I did not want to destroy anything. I just wanted to live. When Evan first met me, he called me ma'am. He never used my name. He didn't insult me. He didn't threaten me. But he treated me like an obstacle, something that stood between him and something he wanted. I never knew what that something was. Evan's wife, Lena, was quiet too, but her quiet felt different, heavy. She watched her husband the way someone watches a storm, carefully, always ready to move. When I spoke to her, she smiled, but her eyes were tired. Once in the kitchen, Lena whispered to me, "Be careful." She said it like advice, not fear. At the time, I didn't understand. Now, I did. That afternoon, I called for a tow truck. I didn't explain. I didn't ask permission. I told the man my car wasn't safe. When he loaded it onto the truck, my knees nearly gave out. I was choosing life, quietly. The mechanic was an older man. He didn't rush. He didn't talk much. He called me later that evening. His voice was calm. "Ma'am," he said. "Eyes my voice." I let the facts speak. When I finished, he covered his face with his hands. For a long time, he said nothing. "I raised him," he whispered. "How did I miss this?" I reached for his hand. "Love can be blind," I said, "but truth doesn't need sight, it needs courage." The next day, Richard called his son. He did not accuse. He asked Evan to come over. Evan arrived confident, relaxed, until he saw Lena sitting beside me, until he saw the folder on the table. For the first time, his smile faltered. I watched quietly, because the most powerful moment of revenge is not when someone suffers, it's when they realize they are no longer in control. Evan sat down slowly, not because anyone told him to, but because his legs seemed to forget their strength. He looked from his father to me to his wife. For the first time since I had known him, he looked unsure. "What's this about?" he asked. His voice was calm, but there was a tightness underneath it now, a crack. Richard slid the folder across the table. He didn't open it. He didn't touch Evan. He just said, "Explain this." Evan didn't reach for the folder right away. He leaned back in his chair, crossed his arms. I noticed how quickly his mind worked, searching for exits, for lies that could still fit. "I don't know what you think you're accusing me of," he said, "but this feels extreme." I spoke then, softly. "No one accused you of anything," I said. "We're just listening." That word made him flinch. Listening, Lena reached forward and opened the folder. She didn't look at Evan when she spoke. She looked at the paper. "The mechanic's report," she said. "The tow receipt, the call logs." She turned a page. "And the words you said in the hallway." Silence filled the room. The clock ticked. Each second felt heavy. Evan laughed once, short, sharp. "You can't prove that," he said. I nodded. "You're right," I said. "I can't." He relaxed slightly, just slightly. "But I don't need to," I continued. "I only needed to stop driving the car." That smile fell away completely. Richard stood up then, not angry, just tired. "You put her life at risk," he said. His voice broke on the word life. Evan looked at him finally. "Dad, you don't understand." "I understand enough," Richard said. "I understand you planned something and thought no one would hear you." Lena closed the folder. "I heard you too," she said quietly. "More than once." Evan turned to her, eyes hard. I promised myself I wouldn't lie anymore," she said. Her voice didn't shake this time. That was the moment I saw it leave him. Control. He stood up so fast his chair scraped loudly against the floor. "This is ridiculous," he snapped. "You're all overreacting." I remained seated. "Sit down," I said gently. He froze. Not because I was loud, but because I was calm. "You don't need to be afraid," I continued. "No one here wants to hurt you." That was true. "We just won't protect you anymore." Those words landed. Richard picked up his phone. "I've already spoken to a lawyer," he said, "and to the police." Evan's face went pale. "You wouldn't," he whispered. Richard met his eyes. "I already did." Evan looked at me then, really looked at me, not with anger, not with hate, with disbelief. "You planned this," he said. I shook my head. "No," I said. "You did. I just survived it." The police came later that evening. Quietly, professionally. There was no shouting, no struggle, just consequences. Lena packed a small bag that night. She didn't take much, just what she needed. Before she left, she hugged me. "Thank you," she whispered, "for listening." I held her tightly. After everyone was gone, the house felt empty, but lighter. I walked into the garage and looked at my car, still waiting, still silent. I rested my hand on the hood. I was alive, not because I fought, but because I paid attention. That night I slept, for the first time in weeks. I slept without fear. The days after were quiet, not the heavy kind of quiet that presses on your chest, but the gentle kind, the kind that lets you breathe. The police handled everything without drama. There were statements, paperwork, long pauses where no one spoke. I answered every question calmly. I told the truth, nothing more, nothing less. Richard stayed close to me. He moved slower than usual, like a man walking through something fragile. One evening, he said, "I keep thinking this is my fault." I poured us both some tea, sat beside him. "Guilt doesn't change the past," I said softly, "but honesty changes the future." He nodded, though his eyes were wet. He had lost a son that week, not to death, but to truth. Lena called me a few days later. Her voice sounded lighter, still sad, but freer. "I found a small place," she said. "It's quiet." I smiled. "I'm glad." She paused. "I didn't know how much I was holding my breath," she admitted, "until I could finally let it go." I understood that feeling. Neighbors noticed the changes. Evan stopped coming by. Lena's car was gone. People asked questions in gentle ways. I gave gentle answers. Family matters, I would say. Things work themselves out. I didn't need to explain. My car was fixed a week later. The mechanic handed me the keys and said, "Be careful out there." I nodded, but this time I wasn't afraid. The first drive felt strange. Every sound seemed louder, every stop felt longer, but the brakes worked perfectly. I pulled over at the park and sat for a while, watched children play, listened to the wind move through the trees. Life had continued without waiting for my permission, and I was grateful. One afternoon, Richard and I sat at the kitchen table again, the same table, but not the same people. "I keep wondering what would have happened," he said, "if you hadn't heard him." I looked at my hands, at the small scars life leaves on everyone. "Then this story wouldn't be mine to tell," I said. "We didn't speak after that, we didn't need to." I wrote in my journal again that night, not about fear, not about anger, but about listening, about how silence carries truth if you let it, about how revenge doesn't always mean watching someone fall. Sometimes it means stepping out of the way. I didn't feel victorious. I felt awake, and that was enough. Time has a way of softening even the sharpest memories. Weeks passed, then months. The house found its rhythm again. Mornings with coffee, evenings with quiet television, ordinary days that felt like gifts. Richard and I talked more than we used to. Not about Evan, but about life. About the things we ignored when we were busy surviving. Sometimes grief sat between us, unspoken, but it no longer owned the room. I thought often about Lena. About how close she had been to disappearing into someone else's darkness. She sent me a letter one day, handwritten. She thanked me again, not for saving her, but for believing her silence meant something. I folded that letter carefully, placed it in my drawer. I never wanted to forget what listening could do. As for Evan, I stopped wondering. I learned that peace does not come from watching someone pay. It comes from knowing you did not become them. My revenge was simple. I woke up each morning. I drove my car. I laughed softly when something was funny. I did not shout my victory. I did not tell the story to make myself important. I tell it now because someone else might be listening to the wrong silence. If something feels off, if a sentence lingers too long in your mind, pay attention. Truth does not always arrive loudly. Sometimes it whispers in hallways. I don't hate Evan. Hate would keep me tied to him. I let go. That was my freedom. And if there is a lesson in all of this, it is this. You, Dawn. It need to raise your voice to protect your life. You just need to listen. If this story stayed with you, if it made you pause, even for a moment, please tap the like button and share your thoughts below. Have you ever noticed something small that changed everything? And if you want more quiet, real stories like this one, subscribe to the channel and stay with us. Until next time. Be gentle with yourself, and always trust what you hear in the silence.